So good morning, David Lewin with Capital Power, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today to provide really my perspective on recent technology innovations related to carbon capture and storage and CCS. As you can see from the previous speakers, there has been and is significant work being done on CCS. So in my mind, that's a good thing. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Capital Power. We're relatively new in a sense that Capital Power was launched in July of last year through a $500 million IPO. The company was created when EPCOR Utilities spun off its generation business. EPCOR's headquartered in Edmonton, Alberta, by the way. And today our assets then are approximately $5 billion. So Capital Power and its subsidiaries acquire, optimize power generation from and develop from a wide range of energy sources, including coal, natural gas, waste heat, hydro, biomass, wind power. We even have a solar collector on the top of the EPCOR Utilities headquarters in Edmonton. So I think we touch most of the renewable bases. The company has about 3,500 megawatts of capacity owned and under management and interest in about 31 facilities across Canada and the US. A company was among the first to introduce commercial scale supercritical combustion technology to Canada and operates which has been noted, the cleanest coal-fired power plant in Canada, the Genesee 3 plant. And it's clean from the perspective of NOx, SO2 particulates, and CO2 emissions relative to vintage plant. So finally, we actively participate in Canadian efforts to commercialize near zero emission coal power technology, which is my area of interest and I'll be talking about today. As we look to the future, we see that North America's population will continue to grow, and so will our economy. We also know that aging infrastructure will need to be replaced to meet the growing demand for reliable, affordable, and environmentally responsible electricity across North America and indeed worldwide. The best way, I believe, to meet this demand is to provide power, electrical power, from a mix or a portfolio of fuel sources, including coal. Some facts then which drives us to this conclusion. Approximately 1/5 of Canada's electricity generation is from coal. Not only is coal the most abundant energy source in the country with reserves that will last literally hundreds of years, it is also a relatively low-cost source of electricity, so that's something that we can't just simply ignore. It's also important to note that coal is one of the only readily available energy sources in the prairie provinces and maritimes. We don't need to import it. It's an indigenous resource. And if Canada had to replace all of the coal-fired generation, say to another fuel in the country, we estimate roughly it would cost about $75 billion. And frankly, we feel that it'd be better to invest some of those dollars in new and improved coal-fired technology. A diverse portfolio of energy supply options then is essential for a stable and economic source of electricity, and it's clear that Canada's energy security will depend in large part on coal for the foreseeable future. The power generation industry is developing new and innovative ways of using this valuable resource, and we're investing in technology to reduce emissions. Through carbon capture and storage, or CCS, CO2 can be captured and safely stored, as we've seen from Judy's presentation. With new technologies and CCS, overall greenhouse gas emissions from power generation can be significantly reduced, while enabling Canada's vast coal reserves to continue as a viable option for power generation. It is not, as was said earlier, I don't see that it's the panacea for all parts. There are some places in Canada where CCS will work very well. There are other places where it would not. And so it's really a case of looking carefully at the regional differences in the country. So as you can see, we firmly believe in technology and advancement in technology to meet our future environmental challenges. One of those technologies that may make CCS possible is coal gasification. And coal gasification simply combines heat and pressure to break down coal into its chemical components, but particularly hydrogen and CO, and producing a synthesis gas, which can then be used in a combined cycle operation to produce power. With the help of a few processes along the way, a pure stream of carbon dioxide can be produced and captured, and then can be either stored, saline aquifers, can be used, in my mind, preferably for enhanced oil recovery, because you get a revenue stream from that. And along the way, of course, helps to produce additional oil. We have found that combining an IGCC, integrated gasification combined cycle, hopefully that's the last time I say that, but IGCC with a carbon capture facility, we found it would capture CO2 in the region of 85 to 90%, depending on how you optimize your design. Compared to supercritical coal-fired facilities, then IGCC also reduces NOx, particulates, mercury, and SO2, and by a significant amount. And I'm talking in the region of 70 to 90% for those emissions. And it also can require less water than conventional pulverized coal-fired plants. So CCS and gasification technologies do exist, as we've heard. The science is sound. What really we need to do now is to demonstrate through commercial scale demonstration plants that the technologies work together, again, at that commercial scale. And so over the last 3 years, a great deal of work has been done towards achieving this important goal. And through the Canadian Clean Power Coalition, of which Capital Power is a member, we undertook a 240 megawatt net IGCC facility with CO2 capture FEED project, front-end engineering design. This required an initial investment of $33 million, equally from Capital Power, from Alberta government, and from the government of Canada. And I can only commend both levels of government for their interest and for their participation in this project, and for providing $22 million towards this successful project. We have now pretty much finished the FEED project, and we'll be reporting back to those levels of government over the next month. This project was specifically designed for operation at Genesee, using Genesee coal, obviously, in Alberta. And as this is a site-specific design, the results can't just generally be applied to other potential projects. One of our key findings is that although the overall concept, of course, can be applied elsewhere, when you're actually doing a front-end engineering design, you must look at it from a site-specific viewpoint in order to accurately predict the final costs. You must know your geology, your geography, and you must know your coal, much more so than I would have ever thought. While we can confidently say that the technology is solid and the facility could operate at availabilities in the 85+% that we've predicted, the business case is simply not there at this particular time, particularly in Alberta, where we have a deregulated marketplace. In our environment of low power prices, capital-intensive technology is continuously evolving. Industry would need to have significant help from probably both levels of government for a first-of-its-kind facility at a commercial scale in the province. What is important here, though, is that industry and government continue to explore alternative options. As I mentioned earlier, we need to have options. We need to have a portfolio of supply in our industry. We don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. So that we can make well-informed decisions along the way as we move forward on the overall path to a smaller carbon footprint, as they say. We have today, as a result of this important feed work, critical information, and we've made a major step forward, and we certainly have a benchmark now which we can compare other alternative technologies. And then, by the way, for a relatively small investment over a 3-year period of time. So we can now provide decision makers with a true understanding of the costs of this technology, particularly relative to the province of Alberta and its coal and its conditions, -30, -40, etc. We can provide decision makers, we can also now use this benchmark against which to compare with other technologies. We can't just simply take shots in the dark and hope that things will work. So I mentioned the need to explore alternative options, and one option that we are jointly exploring with TransAlta in Alberta at the Keep Hills 3 facility, which we jointly will own with TransAlta, is what's called the Project Pioneer. This again is a post-combustion capture process using the Alstom chilled ammonia, and the idea there is to capture about 1 million tons per year from that facility. I think that facility will be up and operating in 2011. So that's another alternative that we're working on, and we're very, very optimistic with respect to that project. Again, as an industry, we need options. At Weyburn, we've heard from Judy what's happening there and has been happening for the last 10 years. And we can also expect to learn a lot more from the CCS, $2 billion CCS fund that the province announced last year. So in conclusion then, the commercialization of technology solutions, including CCS, synthetic gas technology, will ensure that we can count on long-term source of zero-emission base load for the future. Policies need to balance the need for investment in critical power generation infrastructure required to keep our economy going, with the requirement for targeted environmental regulations to transition Canada to a low-carbon future. And in addition, because of our industry's long capital life cycles, policies must also recognize the cost of investments already made in generation infrastructure by consumers, ratepayers, and investors. The transition then to a new lower carbon technologies will enable us to ensure that markets and therefore users will support the true costs of these technologies. And greater progress is being made towards the commercialization of these new technologies. So a lot of work still remains to be done. I'm confident with the right mindset and the right policies and the right approach that we can get to developing and demonstrating these very interesting and exciting technologies. So I'll be happy to discuss any more in depth around CCS over the next hour or so. Thank you.